Hey, how's it going everyone? Jinsula here with a brand new Pokemon GO video. I hope your day is going really well, and let's jump right into it. Okay, so for today's video, I'm going to be giving you all the details for what's happening in Pokemon GO this week, starting October 28th until November 3rd. We of course have the continuation of the Halloween event with part 2, and we're also seeing the debut of a new Gigantamax Pokemon. And unfortunately, with how things ran this past weekend with the debut of Gigantamax Pokemon, I do not suspect that a lot of players are going to be interested in this new Gigantamax encounter, but I could be wrong here. It's really going to depend on what your local communities are feeling regarding Gigantamax Pokemon, so maybe you could get a group together and actually complete these very difficult battles. But regardless of all that, let's talk about all the details, starting off with part 2 of the Halloween event. This is going to be kicking off today, actually, Monday, October 28th, and it's going to go until this Sunday, November 3rd. Now, something you need to keep in mind is that with this part 2 of the Halloween event, there's going to be a whole bunch of costume Pokemon that you're going to be able to get, including 2 brand new ones, Froakie and Rowlet, wearing a costume. And both of them are definitely going to be a high priority, considering that their evolved forms do actually have some sort of gameplay relevance when it comes to PvP, so I do suggest you go out and try to get the shiny forms for either of these costume Pokemon. Both of them are going to be highly valuable, especially when it comes to lucky trades, and if you're lucky, you might get yourself one that is actually usable for PvP. That would actually be a really cool flex, and you do not want to miss out on that. And the best way you can not miss out on that is by being active during this week. There's also going to be some pretty solid bonuses with this part 2 event, and some of those bonuses are actually pretty good, especially when it comes to getting candies for rare Pokemon. If you happen to have some field research tasks saved up from past research events, or just in general from completing field research tasks, it might be a good opportunity right now to actually collect on all those field research tasks so that you can get a whole bunch of candy for certain Pokemon. But I would suggest you wait until this Tuesday Spotlight Hour, because there's also going to be a double catch candy bonus for this Spotlight Hour that you will want to utilize alongside the Halloween event bonuses. But next up, let's talk about that Gigantamax Pokemon that's going to be debuting, and it is of course going to be Gengar. Now, I actually think that Gengar has a really cool Gigantamax form, and for any long-term player or even any newer players, they would know that Gengar is a highly relevant Pokemon. It has a very powerful Mega Evolution, and then on top of that, it is actually pretty decent for raid battles considering it is a glass cannon, and in some cases it's good for PvP as well. So I do think that for what it's worth, this is actually a really cool Gigantamax Pokemon that you could actually go for, but for anyone who tried to get any Gigantamax Pokemon over this past weekend, they would tell you that it is incredibly difficult and requires just way too many trainers to complete. And I do think that's going to continue with Gigantamax Gengar, unfortunately, but here's to hoping that Niantic actually makes some kind of adjustments before this Pokemon gets released. I do have my doubts that Niantic is actually going to do something, but the feedback is definitely circulating. I do think that Gigantamax battles are a little bit overtuned right now, and a lot of players are voicing a lot of frustrations. So hopefully Niantic will make some sort of adjustments, but I'm just not going to hold my breath on that one. Next up, let's switch gears and talk about PvP, because this is actually going to be a very interesting week when it comes to the Go Battle League. Up until this Tuesday, we're going to have the continuation of the Great League Remix, along with the Halloween Cup Great League Edition. But after this Tuesday, we're going to have all 3 of the basic leagues, the Great League, Ultra League, and Master League, be available for battles. So if you have a really solid team for any of these leagues, this is definitely going to be a week you will want to PvP. On top of it being a great opportunity for you to reach higher ranks before the season ends, it's also going to be a week where you're going to get a 4-time Stardust bonus for any Stardust rewards you get during this week. So I do think this is going to be a pretty important week for PvPers, especially if you are trying to reach higher ranks. Now, earlier I mentioned that this Tuesday Spotlight Hour is going to feature a double candy catch bonus, and I do think that when it comes to the 2 Pokemon that are going to be featured as the Spotlight Hour, I do think that both of them are definitely going to draw a lot of attention. They are of course going to be the 2 new costume Pokemon, Froakie and Rowlet, and their costume forms are also going to be a part of it. So if you're looking for the shiny versions of either of these new Pokemon, then you will definitely want to participate during this Tuesday Spotlight Hour, because in my opinion, I think Spotlight Hours are very underrated when it comes to shiny hunting. It's definitely going to be a really good time, especially for a lot of players who are looking for these two particular shinies, and I do think you should not ignore it. Next up, let's talk about the raiding content. So until this Wednesday, we're going to have the continuation of Giratina Origin Form in 5-star legendary raids, but after this Wednesday, we're going to have Darkrai as the 5-star legendary boss. And I do think that when it comes to Darkrai, it is a Pokemon that has fallen off over time, but I do think it is still a pretty decent collector's item considering that it is a mythical, which means you cannot trade for it, you can only raid for it. And if you end up getting yourself a high IV shiny, that's going to be pretty big because you can't get it through a lucky trade. Now, of course, this also means that this Wednesday's raid hour is going to be featuring the Pokemon Darkrai instead of Giratina Origin Form. So unfortunately, if you are counting on this next raid hour for getting more candies for Giratina Origin Form, that's not going to be possible because Darkrai is going to be the featured Pokemon. But if you're looking to collect candies for Darkrai and possibly getting yourself a high IV version of it, then this Wednesday's raid hour is definitely one you will not want to miss out on. Considering that Darkrai does not often return to raid battles, getting yourself a 100% IV of this Pokemon or possibly even a Shundo is definitely going to be a solid collector's item. And in most cases, Darkrai is still usable when it comes to dark type raid damage, so you should still probably raid for it even though it's not necessarily top tier status. But next, let's talk about what's going to be happening in Mega Evolution raids. Up until this Wednesday, we're going to continue to see Mega Sableye, but afterwards we're going to have Mega Banette in Mega Evolution raids. Now, this is actually a Mega Evolution that is quite relevant when it comes to ghost type damage. While a lot of players will argue that Gengar is going to be the more superior option, considering that it does have a double typing of poison and ghost, that means for certain raid bosses like psychic types that are actually weak against ghost types, they're actually still really strong against poison types. But when it comes to Mega Banette, you do not have that issue. So if you want yourself a solid ghost type Mega Evolution that is going to be a lot more consistent, then I do suggest you get as much Mega Energy as you can of Mega Banette, because I do think in most cases it is going to be far more useful. And then finally, let's talk about what the Shadow Legendary raids are going to be during the weekends. It's going to be the continuation of Shadow Suicune. And like I said last week, this is not a relevant Pokemon by any means, so do not feel compelled to use your raid passes this weekend to get this Shadow Legendary. So yeah, overall, it's not necessarily that exciting of a week outside of maybe the Halloween Part 2 event. I would say that that is probably going to be the major highlight. And I do think that what was supposed to be the major highlight, being Gigantamax Gengar, is kind of being overshadowed by the disastrous launch of Gigantamax battles this past weekend. So yeah, it's going to be a very interesting week. I think what's going to be a lot more important are those in-game bonuses from the Halloween Part 2 event. It's going to be a very solid time of collecting candies. I think that should be your highest priority. And then don't forget that on Halloween, October 31st, there's going to be another bonus that's going to be active only for that day, where you could possibly get yourself Rare Candy XLs when you catch Pokemon with Nice Throws, Great Throws, and Excellent Throws. And that is a bonus that, even though in the past it hasn't been as substantial, it's still one you should not ignore. It's a great opportunity for you to get some of these rare items. But yeah, with that said, that's essentially going to be it for this video. Now, I would like to know what you are thinking regarding everything that I talked about down below. Is there a particular bonus or event that you're actually looking forward to? Or are you going to completely skip out on this week because nothing is really interesting you? Well, definitely share those thoughts down below in the comments, and yeah, hopefully we can have a great discussion. And thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. I'm Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you in the next one.